Hey, there she is. The most, I wouldn't say annoying, but the the most funny little sister in the entire world. There was a moment there where I was kind of getting the feeling that you wouldn't show up. Not like I'd mind or anything. It's you that's getting something out of this, not me. So, if you actually didn't want the PC, like you've been talking about all these weeks, then no skin off my back. I've got plenty of other friends that would benefit from this much more than you would. Just know that I'm doing this because I love you. And definitely not for anything else. Okay. So, I know I said today I'd help you build your first gaming PC, but it's a little complicated. I may have already put together the entire PC because it may be made up of parts from 3 different computers that I cobbled together in order to make one working system out of the 3 broken systems. So, I had to test everything, because if I didn't, I'd run the risk of helping you build your PC and putting all the parts together and being really confident and happy about it, and then it not turning on at all, or, not working properly. So, I had to build it. And now, in order to help you learn what the components are and how to build it yourself, I've devised a plan, right? So, I'm going to disassemble it while you watch, and I'll go slow so that, we're not doing things too quickly, and I'll kind of explain each part as I take it out of the PC, what it does, and kind of how it goes on, how it comes off, that sort of thing. And then once I'm done with this disassembly, I'll have you try. No, I don't expect you to get it on your first try. Of course, you don't know a whole lot, that's why I'm teaching you, but I believe the best way that I've learned to learn is by doing and making mistakes, because I feel like when I do it that way, it sticks in my mind a whole lot better than it would have if I had just known everything from the start and, relied on prior knowledge. Because, I don't know, I guess that's just how my mind works. Having something incorrect at the start and then correcting it just sticks in my mind so much better. So we'll do it that way, and if you have any questions, just ask. I'm here. And, yeah. Okay, so here she is. Yes, she's a she. I know it's weird, but I kind of have a thing for PCs. I've named everyone I've built, and she's Amanda. No, you don't get to name her. Yes, it's complicated. Yes, she is a Franken monster. No, I will not tell you who I killed in order to build her, but her name is Amanda. Yes. This is an old NZXT case, but no. No, it is not the original parts, in any regard. This case is maybe even older than you. Yeah, it was from one of my old coworkers' first PCs. He abandoned the case in our storage room at work when he built his new PC, because I guess he just didn't care for throwing it away after he sold all the valuable parts, but the case still works as a case. I had to clean like 10 years of dust on it. 10 years of dust off it, but that definitely beats having to buy a whole new case. Trust me, I'd know. Yeah, not to mention all the fans, the case fans, they died. So I had to replace those. That was okay, because we had extras in the office, and I'm sure my boss won't miss them at all. In any case, nice red NZXT case. The LEDs don't quite work anymore because of rust, but that's okay. We didn't need RGB. That's fine. And yeah, you can see through the front panel, it's not actually glass, it's just plastic. I know it'd be cooler if it had a tempered glass window, but plastic has to do. It's a lot less fragile, and I know it scratches and looks a little disgusting, but at least it's better, I think, than a completely closed off case. You can see the salvaged components in all of their glory. The front panel's actually going to be the first thing we're going to take off for this disassembly. So if you look here on the back, there are 2 thumb screws. I'm just going to unscrew them with my thumb, hence the name, thumb screws. And then carefully, we pull it backwards, right, to how the thumb screws came out, using this handle right here, and see, it just pops off. We're going to lay this on the side so that it's not in the way. I didn't really think this through. The next thing we're going to do is disconnect power from the motherboard. So right now, the motherboard is still connected to the power supply. The power supply is not plugged in, but there could be residual electricity in the power supply. So before we touch anything else and risk shorting something, we're going to take out all the connections from the PC to the power supply. To do that, you see this big bunch of cables running to the motherboard. That's the 24-pin connector that provides the main power to the motherboard, and I'm pretty sure the RAM and the PCI cards, so including the graphics card. Since it's a 1050 Ti, it doesn't require any extra power. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. Basically, this provides the main power to the board. It has this little clip on the back. We're going to pull on that clip. It's going to come out. Good to go. Next, if you see a little bit higher on the motherboard, there's this 8-pin connector. That's for the CPU. It supplies power just to the CPU. That's important for whatever reason. Just kind of how they work. We're going to unplug that one too. Now, we've completely disconnected the computer from, well, I mean, like, except the hard drives, but we've disconnected everything on the motherboard that was connected to the power supply. And we're good to go on that. So next, what we're going to do is disconnect all of the front panel stuff. So you see here on the top of the case, there's a couple of USB ports, a power button, and a mic and audio jack. We have to connect those to the motherboard with their own traces of wires, and we need to take those off for disassembly. You can see on the bottom of the board there on the far left, that's the HD audio for the headphone microphone jacks. To the right of that is the USB 2.0 ports, the connector that looks like the HD audio ports, but they're actually completely different. And then the big beefy one, that's the USB 3.0 slots, the blue ones on the top. So we're just going to go ahead and lightly pull and disconnect all of those. I know it feels a little bit strange, but don't worry, it's okay. The motherboard is tough. I've done this a couple of times during testing. It should be fine. And then finally, on the completely far right, there's our connections for the power switch LED, so it'll turn on when the computer is on. The hard drive LED, it'll kind of blink whenever a hard drive is being written or read from. And then the power and reset switch, basically, power to power on, reset kind of just does a hard restart of the computer. Now that we have that all disconnected, we basically have the motherboard completely disconnected from everything that it was connected to wire-wise. We still have the graphics card, which is kind of attached to the side of the case, so we'll have to disconnect that too. But before we do that, just for safety's sake, we're going to lean the PC on its side. Continuing the disassembly, we will eventually take off the back panel and mess with my terrible cable management, but for now we'll just forget that exists and focus on the main components, because I haven't really talked about that too much. So I've talked about the power supply. That's this small, well, not small, but this box under everything else. It's what takes in the power from the wall and converts that into power that the computer can use. It's very useful. And yeah, that's about what we need to learn from that. And basically, the motherboard is what connects all the components together and makes them interface with each other. It's kind of the bridge between all the important parts of your computer, in a nutshell. What we're going to be removing next, after we lay the case on its side so that the motherboard is kind of parallel with the ground, is the graphics card, or the GPU. I think it stands for General Processing Unit, but more often than not, there are applications for use in a lot of things like statistics or engineering, or even in creative processes, but I'm pretty sure we're going to just be using it for gaming, which, isn't a bad thing. But yeah, okay, so there is a thumb screw. I forgot to point it out. The GPU is the card that is plugged into the motherboard. Yeah, that one. The one that has its own fan. Yes, that is the GPU. I know it looks a little scrawny. It's an OEM 1050 Ti, not a Founders 1050 or ROG. OEM basically means it's a special type of card that Dell orders specifically for their I think it was from an XPS system, so it doesn't need all the flashy marketing and stuff, because Nvidia doesn't sell people OEM cards. It sells Dell the OEM cards to sell in the system that they sell, so it doesn't need all of the extra marketing fluff and whatnot. But technically it's supposed to have the same performance as regular Founders Edition 1050. But yeah, it's basically what allows us to play any recent video game. I'm not saying a 1050 is new or anything, but we got this for free, so again, beggars can't be choosers. So, in order to remove the graphics card, the first thing we're going to do is you see the thumb screw that is kind of holding the side bracket down to the case. You're just going to slowly turn that until it comes out. We're going to set that aside in our magnetic tray. We'll put it back immediately after. And then, do you see the little tab to the right of the graphics card? Yeah, underneath it. Yeah, it's just sticking out right there. If you push down on that, it should push the graphics card up out of the PCI slot. Yep, just like that. And now you can safely pull the graphics card out. Good. We'll set that aside for now. We'll come back to that later, during the reassembly, but right now that's all we're really doing with it. The next thing we're going to do, since now the motherboard is completely disconnected from everything in the case, is start undoing the motherboard screws. They're all Phillips head. Very easy. I got a screwdriver ready. It's the same one I put them in with, so you should be good to go. So rule of thumb is just kind of start with the corners. So like if you started with top right, you'd then go bottom left, and just kind of make X's and crosses until all the screws are out. There's one screw hole in the middle that doesn't have a screw. Was either I'm not really sure, because again, I didn't buy this case, so I don't know, but that standoff has just a metal kind of hole in it instead of a screw hole. So what I'm assuming that's for is for alignment. So when we put it back on, you just kind of line it up with the pole in the middle, and it kind of goes through where the screw should be so that you can line up the other screws. Again, I'm not really sure, but that's just my theory on it. So, nice. Yeah, just, yeah, I mean, just keep on unscrewing the screws and putting in the magnetic tray. And then most of the case screws that we're taking out that aren't thumb screws are identical to each other. So we do still want to keep track of which ones goes where, the thumb screws from the front panel, and then the thumb screw from the GPU slot, and then the case screws for the motherboard. But again, if there's ever any mix-up, the case screws that attach the power supply to the power supply bracket are the same screws that attach the motherboard to the case standoffs. So, standoffs. Standoffs are basically the kind of like risers inside of the case, so that the back of the motherboard isn't touching the metal of the case, because if it did, that might cause shorts or short circuits, like places that shouldn't be connected but are, because metal is conductive, and it kind of like gives a little bit of a gap between the motherboard, the back of the motherboard, and the metal of the case, so that doesn't happen. Okay, so now that you've got all the screws out, I want you to grab the motherboard by the CPU cooler, the kind of like block of the fin block with the fan on top of it in the middle, and just sort of gently take it out. Don't finagle it or anything. One thing you learn pretty quick with computers is if it doesn't move, you're doing something wrong, and you shouldn't try to use force. That's how we break things. But yeah, see, you took it out pretty well, and now we have the motherboard out. The motherboard still has a couple of important things that we're going to have to disassemble to just kind of give you a heads up. Oh, right. I forgot about those. So we're completely disconnected. It's good that you didn't keep pulling. That's my bad. Those are the SATA cables, or SATA data cables. They're what connect the storage drives to the motherboard. You see how they have that little metal clip on the top of them? Yeah, just push down on that and then pull, and they should come right out. Yes, there you go. And remember, I color coded them so it'd be easier, but the black one is the OS drive, the one that Windows is installed on, and red is the storage drive. So when we're reconnecting that later, the black one will go into the number 0 slot, and the red one will go into the number 1 slot. That'll just make sure that the motherboard knows which one is the boot drive, and will not cause any issues while booting. I'm considering teaching you how to install Windows, but that might be a little bit more than what we bargained for, so I'll consider it, but that just might be a project for another day. Okay, so now we've got that removed. Let's just set it down on this little sheet of cardboard I have here. The reason why I have it is because kind of placing a motherboard directly on a table isn't exactly good practice. I mean, you could, but again, we're just trying not to damage the components, so being careful with them is paramount. And we're going to do a little bit of disassembly. So the first thing we're going to take out is the RAM. So I mentioned storage drives earlier. Those are kind of, what your operating system lives on, where you install all your games, the number that dictates how many more games you can install, or if you've ran out of disk space. Basically, those drives are full of data. What we're going to take out next is the RAM, or the random access memory. This is typically faster memory than the storage drives, and it's used as a temporary kind of cache where active programs can save files to that they need a faster storage medium. So, like it's kept in the cold storage and the storage drives until it's needed, and then it's loaded onto the RAM so that it can be accessed quickly by the program, and it doesn't need to, access the slower memory, which would take time and, make games load slower, or, just make programs run generally slower. So the RAM helps out with that, basically. To take it out, usually motherboards have kind of 2 push-down tabs for RAM, but this guy's a special guy. It makes it a little easier. It's just 1 push-down tab at the top. Yeah, right there. So just gently push that down. Again, don't depress it too hard. If it's not coming, it's not coming. Yeah, and then you hear that click, and just pull the stick of RAM out. You have 2 sticks of RAM in the first channel. That's actually a mistake on my part. We should have made it dual channel, but that's all right. I'll explain it later. They are each 8 gigabytes for a total of 16 gigabytes of RAM. Very cool. It's about enough to play most modern games, but as time progresses and technology gets better, it'll soon or later become obsolete, and we can again set those sticks of RAM aside. And then finally, the final main, very important component of our computer besides the storage drives is the CPU, or the central processing unit. This is basically your brains of the operation, the head honcho, the guy that runs everything. I don't really know how much more I can explain at surface level, but basically he runs the show most of the time. Sometimes, even the GPU, it receives instructions from the CPU on what to do. Cool. I think that's enough. Removing the CPU is going to be a little bit more messy because it has a layer of thermal paste between it and the cooler. In short, there are kind of microscopic surface level imperfections in the metal between the heatsink and the CPU, and that causes, it doesn't cause, but it leads to very bad heat transfer, where the heatsink is supposed to dissipate heat generated by the CPU, but due to those surface level imperfections, the heat transfer isn't as efficient as it could be. Thermal paste is basically a thermally conductive paste that is spread onto the CPU, which kind of fills in those surface level imperfections between the CPU and heatsink, allowing for a better heat transfer, so that it can. You see all these fins on the heatsink? Yeah, basically those are used so that air can kind of circulate through it, and then the fan on top helps to continue circulating that air, which cools down your PC. Very cool. To take it off, we're going to use our Phillips head screwdriver again. There are 4 screws around it. You're just going to slowly torque those. Don't do too many turns at once. We don't want to pop one side off without the other. So start with like 5 to 6 turns per screw. Do it in that same corner to corner method. So start top left, go bottom right, then up, then back down to the others, the opposite corner, and just start with 5 to 6 turns to the left for each screw, and then you can finish unscrewing each of them. This is because can you see the springs under the screws, or kind of part of the screw? These are for tensioning the heatsink onto the CPU. So kind of you can tighten it a little bit more, and the springs will kind of press up, and they'll make it so that the heatsink is pushed really far down onto the CPU without breaking anything. Because if the springs weren't there and you tighten it too much, it would break the PCB or the motherboard, and that would be bad. So yeah. Anyways, just remove that. Again, remember there is thermal paste underneath it. So once you have all the screws loose, don't take it out immediately. Just kind of pick it up, flip it over. Try not to get any thermal paste on yourself. If you do, it's not the end of the world. It's just a little messy, a little greasy, but that's fine. And then just go ahead and set the heatsink next to the GPU. And finally, we'll just clean the thermal paste off of everything. It's just kind of good practice to reapply thermal paste every time you do any maintenance with the cooler. I don't remember exactly why, but just kind of something that I've always done because the people who taught me always do it, and I assume there's a good reason behind it. I don't know the exact reason, but I assume that doesn't really matter. Okay, so I think we've done enough disassembly that I'm comfortable with today. Eventually, I'll teach you about the fan splitter in the back and how to work with the modular PSU, but I don't want to keep you too long, and you still have to reassemble everything. So, let's first clean off all the thermal paste from the, here's some paper towels. There you go. Yeah, we try not to use anything wet because water can short the board. So, yeah, just dry paper towels. I know it's a little bit more messy and you're just kind of spreading it around, but you should be able to get it all off. Yep. It is pretty recently applied since I, had to test all these parts. You should have seen how it was before. You see how it's still kind of like liquidy? Yeah. When I was removing the thermal paste, it was just like actually, what's it called? Like solid, like hard as a rock. So you can imagine that. And it's pretty nuts. But yeah. So there we go. Everything's good to go. And let's just take out the CPU to kind of be like final with it, so you can say you put it all back together. There's that. We'll call it a tensioning bar because I don't know the actual name for it. It's that kind of like metal paperclip sort of thing on the right side of the CPU. Yeah, just go ahead and press down on that and take it out. Yeah, just a little bit to the side. And you see how the tensioning thing on top of the CPU kind of moves back. Just go ahead and move the paperclip thing back until it comes off and up. There you go. And now very carefully, so we don't bend any of the motherboard pins for the CPU, grip the die of the CPU with both fingers and just kind of pull it out. You can take a look at it. It says i7-7700 because that's what it is. It's a pretty old processor. Please don't at me, but it's what we could get our hands on. So it's what we're working with. Now, I'll leave it to you to start putting back everything together. Just try to do all the steps that we did, but in reverse. And I'll let you know if you're doing anything incorrectly. So, yeah, go for it. Oh, right. So, yes, correct. We just took out the CPU, so that would be the first thing you'd put back in. The way that you know it's correct is, we see the notches cut out of the PCB on each side. There are two close to the top. There are also, they're cutouts, and then there are notches in the CPU slot. Yeah, see those two right there. And then there's also that gold arrow on the bottom right hand corner that lines up with the black arrow on the motherboard. Yeah, just line everything up. Be careful. Again, place it in softly, gently, and you're good. Well, not yet. It's not tensioned, but like you did it correctly. You lined up the notches and whatever. Okay. Yeah, now just continue to do what you were doing. Okay, so the tensioning brackets may seem a little bit complicated to start, but it's actually pretty simple. You just move the paperclip thing back until the bracket is, you see how it has the two prongs on the front? You move it back until those prongs are behind that screw. Do you see the screw just in front of it? Yeah, right there. And then you push the paperclip thing forward until the prongs are under that screw, and then you just push the paperclip thing back down to where it was. Yeah, just like that. So now you've successfully installed the CPU. Very nice. Next, thermal paste. So I have this little syringe of thermal paste right here. You just want to place about a rice kernel sized drop in the approximate middle of the die. There are better ways to do it that are a little bit more effective, but the tensioning between the heatsink and the CPU should spread it out enough to get good enough thermal transfer. Like, it isn't the best, but it definitely does the job. I would know. I've stress tested it. Yeah, so just, again, a little rice kernel size drop. Again, this is somewhere where you really want to finesse. Putting too much will cause it to overflow, and then it'll be all over the bracket and the CPU, and that's just even more disgusting to clean. So try to do it right. Yeah, that's a good size. So yeah. Sorry, my voice keeps cracking. I swear, I'm an old adult, and definitely I'm not a kid anymore. And now, we are going to put the heatsink back on. I'm sure you know how to do that. Yeah, you had, taken off the wire. I should have said that, but that's basically what provides power to the fan on the top. If you look on the motherboard, there are a few labels. One of them, just to the top and to the right of the motherboard, or of the CPU slot, says CPU fan. Do you see that this kind of CPU underscore fan? That's where you'll connect the connector to once you have it screwed on, but you want to screw it on before connecting that connector. So again, I know I mentioned this a lot, but I just want to make sure it gets drilled in your head because it's important for proper tensioning. Start with either of the top corners, then do the opposite corner, and then go up. Do that corner, opposite corner, start with 5 turns, and then fully tighten. Yeah, sorry. I know you're not an idiot. I just want to make sure you do this correctly. Because again, let me tell you, it is such a bummer when you finish building a PC and you try to turn it on and it doesn't turn on. Let me tell you, that is one of the worst feelings in this whole world. But yeah, I mean, the individual tasks aren't that difficult. Okay, very good. Now we have the CPU installed. Now we'll install the sticks of RAM. If you can see, the channels are color-coded. So channel 1 is the 2 black slots. Channel 2 is the 2 gray slots. So I had messed up and accidentally put them both in channel 1, so the memory wasn't running in dual channel. I don't exactly remember why dual channel is better than single channel, but according to everyone who knows about computers, running in dual channel is better. So you'll put 1 stick of RAM in 1 gray slot and 1 in 1 black slot. Yes. To line it up, you see the notch in the middle? You line up that with the notch in the slot, and it should go in. Yeah, just push down on it in your thumbs until you hear the click. Once you hear the click, you're good to go. Yeah, just like that. Very good. Just go ahead and put in the other stick of RAM. Very nice. You're a pro at this already. Okay, now that we have most of the components attached to the motherboard, we'll attach the GPU later again because it has its own bracket. We're going to put it back inside of the PC case. So, you see that little metal lining where all the ports are, or where all the ports were. It's in the shape of all the ports. That is called the I/O shield. I/O stands for input output. One of the ports outputs to your display, another one of the ports receives input from the keyboard and mouse, hence I/O. And the IO shield, I don't remember what it does exactly. I think it might be static electricity or dust or something or other, but it is important, I swear. I've never built a PC without one, trust me. But you want to make sure when you're putting the motherboard back in, you're not only aligning the motherboard with the standoff screw holes, but also making sure the ports are flush with the IO shield. Yeah, just like that. You're a little bit off. Yeah, if you can see right in the middle, you're not quite on the guiding standoff. So just yeah, move it a little that way. And there you are. See how the guiding standoff kind of came through that screw hole? You're good to go. And if you look at all the other screw holes, they're all lined up, nice, ready for action. So you're doing great. Next, we're going to go to that pile of K-screws that I said were for the motherboard, that we set aside for the motherboard. And again, the X crossing method. Start whichever top corner you want, opposite corner, up, opposite corner, and then do the middle ones last. Well, not the, you know what I mean, kind of the edge ones that are in the middle and not a corner. Yeah, it is a lot of screws, but just imagine this, okay? You didn't have to do any of the fan screws or the PSU screws or the screws that attach the storage drives to the storage drive bays. So please don't complain. This is really not a whole lot. I'm not trying to say that I did a lot of work, because I love doing this, and that's why I love teaching you. I think computers are one of the things in my life that brings me actual true joy, not gonna lie. So being able to make this happen for you is great. But I am saying that there is a lot more work that you didn't have to do that I did for you, and just remember that. The motherboard screws aren't that much. Cool. Now our motherboard is connected. Sorry, I've been kind of... What do you think we do next? Okay, we could plug in power, but it's better, I'd say, to plug in everything else before we plug in power. So, what else can we plug in? Yes, color-coded. Okay, the SATA data cables. Do you remember which one is which? No. Okay, that's fine. I said it kind of quick. It's okay. So, the black one connects to your main boot drive with Windows on it and whatnot. That's the black one. If you look at the motherboard labels, you'll want to connect that to the SATA port 0 or SATA 0. And then the red one is your storage drive. You're going to connect that to SATA port 1 or SATA 1. Yeah, you've got it upside down. There you go. Connected. Nice. So now our drives are connected. Very cool. What's next? Yeah. Again, front panel. Sorry, I've got a thing for proper terminology. Sorry if it's annoying. But yes, so we'll just do everything. Again, most of the ports are pretty significantly different. We'll do power, reset, and then the LEDs last, because those pins are a little bit more out there than the other ones are. But we'll start with HD audio and USB 2.0 because they look pretty similar. If you look, HD audio, I'm pretty sure has I can't remember off the top of my head, but see how one of the pins is missing on HD audio on the motherboard? Yeah, the one on the far left. You're going to want to find the connector that has that one blacked out. So it should have holes everywhere except for where that one pin is missing. Yes, that one. And just align all the holes and push it in gently. There you go. And then common denominator, the other one is USB 2.0. But just to make sure, again, it should have one of the pinholes blacked out or filled in with plastic, rather. Just look for, again, it is the USB 2.0 slot, but just making sure that that's the right one. Okay, cool. You got it. Next is the USB 3.0. Yeah, right there. Very cool. And it does have that notch, so you don't have to look for the pins. It's just everything goes in like that. Yes, very good. Okay, so the labels are kind of hard to read, so let me get my flashlight out. Okay, do you see the labels on the very bottom? Yep, so you see how it says that pins 1 and 2 are the power switch LED. Pins 3 and 4 are for the power switch. Pins 5 and 6 are for the hard drive LED, and pins 7 and 8 for the reset switch. And you see how there's that array of 8 pins just above the legend. You want to plug in the reset switch and the hard drive LED ones first, or HDD. HDD is short for hard drive disk. You want to plug those in first, because if you don't, then it's harder to plug them in after. So just go ahead and plug them in. The label should be facing up. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Yeah, you got it. And then do the power switch one directly above the reset switch. And then you might be asking yourself, why is the power switch LED two different ones instead of just being a single one like the others are? I think it's because it's the only one that actually is powered and isn't just bridging a gap, because the other ones are just bridging gaps. To provide power to the LED, so it needs a positive and a minus. If you look at the legend, the positive is on the left, the minus is on the right. Again, plug them in with the labels facing up, and you should be good to go. Yeah. So now we have everything else plugged in that isn't power to the motherboard, so now feel free to plug in the the power cables. So yeah, just on the top there, again, 8 pin for CPU goes right there. You got it. And then where does the 20 pin port go? All right, where does the 24 pin go? Got it. You are superb. Right there. Make sure you push it in until a click. I know it feels a little weird pushing against the PCB. It flexes a little bit, but you want to make sure that those connections are making good contact. Very good. Very nice. Okay. Finally, what's the last thing we do? Right, the GPU. So go ahead and pick up that bad boy, get its thumb screw, and just first you want to line up the bracket with the kind of slide in thing, and then the card with the PCIe slot. Cool. Yeah, you got to line up. Now just gently push down. Again, don't force it. If it doesn't want to go, it won't go. And yeah, there you go. It doesn't make a click nearly as satisfying as the RAM, but you see how all the gold traces are gone, and you can only see the PCB. Well, I forget what PCB stands for, but basically the colored stuff that all the traces are on. You don't see the gold connectors anymore because they're all inside the slot. So that's how you know you're good to go. And just line up that thumb screw with the hole in the case and the GPU, and just hand tighten it. And you don't need to tighten it too much. We don't need a screwdriver for this. Just hand tighten it. And yeah, that should be everything, I'm pretty sure, unless I'm forgetting something. I don't know. I'm kind of tired, but that's okay. And let's just put the front panel back on. Just really quickly, do you see how there's this kind of divot in the front panel? That lines up with this slot right here on the case. So just line those up. And push forward. Everything should click in. And then attach the thumb screws back to the back of the case to attach the front panel to the case. And there we go. You've rebuilt the PC that you just disassembled. Again, you didn't do every single one of the steps, but you did quite a fair bit, and I hope you learned something. If you want to do the honors, let's plug everything in. Start with power. Yep, the PSU all the way down there. That weird 3-pin connector that kind of looks like a face. Got it. And what's it called? Make sure that switch stays on the circle, not the line. That means it's off. We don't want to turn everything until it's all plugged in. It's kind of a, I don't know, christening thing that I like to do. Yeah, that's the HDMI cord. Go ahead and make sure you plug that into the graphics card. If you don't, if you plug it into the motherboard, it won't take advantage of the graphics card, and that's pretty stupid, not gonna lie. It's basically not using the hardware that you have, kind of unused horsepower or whatever. You can plug the keyboard and mouse into those 2 USB slots. Very good. Ethernet, yeah, it goes into that kind of like house-shaped one with the 2 LEDs on the top. You got it, and that should be everything. If you want to hit the power switch on the top, we got fad and spin. That's good. LEDs are coming on. And see those red lights that are kind of periodically popping up? They should all go off, but if one of them stays on, they're all next to a label like boot device, VG output, CPU, DRAM. If any of those stay red, there is an issue with that particular component, and it'll help diagnosing if anything ever goes wrong. But we already got splash screen. We're already at Windows. We're good to go. There's your PC. We can install games or whatever you want. I think I still have the test stuff installed, because I did a little bit of stress testing with the CPU. I.e., I played video games at work because I was bored. But yeah, we can completely wipe and format the drives, and you can start afresh. I don't really mind. But yeah, it was really fun. I appreciate you sticking with me throughout this entire process. But it's yours now. Don't feel like you owe me anything. Just being able to bring this experience to you, honestly, is payment enough. We should play Minecraft sometime, or something. Or League. I'm down for League, too. Or literally whatever. Honestly, just spending time with you makes me happy. And sharing my knowledge of computers just like doubles that happiness, so you're great. I appreciated this. I'm gonna go grab a snack now. It's been like 50 minutes, so yeah. Time flies when you're having fun. See you around, sis.